Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name's Andrew Ferrier, and I'm here to talk to you about a tool that I've developed called memy, M-E-M-Y. So memy is a fast, modern CLI tool, or command line tool, for tracking and recalling frequently used directories and files using frequency algorithms, which combine the concepts of frequency, so how often files and directories are used, and recency, so how recently they're used. It's primarily designed for those who are comfortable working with the command line and hacking on their systems. There are alternatives, so for example, one frequently used and very popular option is zoxide or zoxide. This is, as itself described, a smarter CD command, so this is primarily focused on tracking directories that are frequently used and enabling you to jump between them. However, it doesn't track files, which memy additionally does. Another alternative is FASD or FAST or FASD. So this is a similar tool. This actually does track files as well. However, this is based entirely in shell script and it has a number of limitations that I wanted to try and overcome in memy with a modern Rust implementation and a SQLite database backing it. In fact, it's worth noting that memy will import the database from both zoxide and FAST if you have one when it first uses itself, making migration easier. Now, memy is primarily a back-end. Building front ends is kind of primarily up to you, although we are adding in some basic front-end functionality. I'll explain more about what that means as I go through. So let's stop talking and actually kind of show you a demo so that you can kind of get an understanding as to how memy works. So here you can see I've got a terminal with basically a kind of dummy environment that we can work in to demonstrate memy. You'll see that I'm in a directory called memy in my home directory. This actually has the memy source code repository itself. But if you navigate around, you can see I've got various folders and files and so on in here. If, for example, I go into the documents folder, I might be working with the notes.md markdown file. So what I can do is I can actually note that file by typing memy note, and that will add that to the memy note database. I can also note directories. So let's say, for example, I want to note the projects directory in my home directory. So I can run memy note tilde projects, and that will note that as well. If I run memy list, I'll now get a list of all of the files and directories that I've noted. So far, so good. Incidentally, if I run memy list F or I run memy list D, I can filter that by files and directory types only. Now, as I mentioned, memy uses a frequency algorithm. So what that means is if I repeatedly note the same file or the same directory, so let's say, for example, I note notes.md 3 times like this. If I run memy list, you'll now see that notes.md is towards the bottom of my list, and that's because I've accessed it both the most frequently but also most recently. And so memy is starting to prioritize that file in my list. Incidentally, if you want to see the internals of what memy is doing under the covers, you can run memy list -- format equals JSON, and you can see in JSON format that slightly more kind of internal representation as to how memy is storing its own database. So you can see the calculated frequency score along with the raw count score, so how often it was noted and when it was last noted, as well as the file type and some other information. It's worth pointing out that memy actually copes very well with the concept of deleting files. So if, for example, I were to move this notes file into the temp directory, so let's simulate the fact that I've deleted that file from the docs directory. If I now run memy list, you'll notice that it's disappeared from the list. If I move it back into place in this directory and I run memy list, it will now pop up again. So memy will essentially track files that are missing. It won't include them when you run memy list, but they will still persist in its database for a certain amount of time, and that's 30 days by default. It's probably also worth pointing out that memy is, before we go much further, that memy is a well-behaved command line tool. So that means it's got kind of interactive help for a lot of the things that you can do. So I can run memy -- help generally, and it will give me help information about all the commands that memy has. Note and list are by far and away the most important and frequently used ones. And I can also run -- help on a particular command to get a bit more information about specific parameters that I can provide there, and other kind of customization that we won't go into in this particular demo. Now, it's worth noting that, of course, because memy list is just essentially a free text list, the same as any Unix command will, or Linux command will produce. I can start combining that with other tools. So for example, I can combine that with FZF. Now, if you haven't come across with FZF before, I won't go into it in detail in this video, but this is a very popular tool for basically filtering different inputs and kind of interactively allowing you to search and then select outputs. So what I can do, for example, is I can pipe the output of memy list into FZF, and now I have those two items that are in the memy database in this kind of interactive list, and I can sort of filter that down. So if I type project, then you'll see that it's selecting projects only from that list. As soon as I hit enter or return, I now have that one file that I selected as the output of my FZF list. Now this can come in handy. So let's say, for example, I've got a bunch of different files in my memy database. So let's start noting some more files. So let's say I've been working with this readme file here. Let's say I've also been working with this C file here. So if I now run memy list -f, you'll see I've now got 3 files in my memy database. What I can do is I can start constructing compound command lines that are helpful. And in order to do this, what I'll do is I'll go back to the memy readme where we've got a few examples, and I'll take one of those examples from this readme. So this is an example where we can open a recently used file in our editor. So let's assume for now that our editor is the kind of stalwart of editors, Vim. So I'll take this command line here and I'll paste it into my my terminal here, and I'll run that, and you'll see I've now got my 3 files popping up in FZF. I can select one of them, so let's say I want to work on main.c, press return, and now that opens up inside Vim. I can make whatever changes, I can work with this in the normal way, I can now quit out of my editor, and bingo, there we go. So now I've been able to interactively select from my memy database which file I want to open up in Vim. Now that's just one of many examples of how you could combine memy with other commands. Of course, what I'd normally want to do is I'd want to wrap this up in some kind of shell alias or function or something like this. So if, for example, I wanted to call it memy select file, because I'm working with bash as my shell, I might write something like this, alias memy select file, and then that command we previously run. And now, of course, I can just run memy select file, and now I can go and select my main.c and do the same as I did before. Of course, what I would typically want to do is then take this and put this in my bash rc file or some other kind of shell initialization, so that I've got that time and time again. And so this is what we mean when we say that memy doesn't really provide much of a front end for working with it. It's primarily a back-end database, and it's up to you to find interesting ways to combine memy with other shell commands that you work with, or for that matter, other non-shell commands that you work with, in order to track and use your frequently and recently used files and directories. That said, we have got a few ideas here in the README for kind of getting started, and I am considering other ways of providing more out-of-the-box capability here. So any ideas or thoughts there would be gratefully received. Now, it is worth noting that, of course, all of this noting behavior, right, where we're going around the file system and we're noting files to add them into our memy database, can get somewhat tedious, right? We don't really want to be doing that manually. And so what memy does do is it provides a variety of what we call hooks, and those hooks allow you to integrate memy with existing tools. So one example might be bash. So bash is the shell, the default shell that we're using here, the default shell on many, if not most, Linux distributions. So let me go and take this command here from the README, and what this will do is this will install what we call the hook for bash. So this is basically a mechanism where memy will integrate into bash, and then it will automatically capture files and directories as they're used. So let me run that command. Excuse me, I've copied and pasted incorrectly there. Let me go and take that command. Let me go and paste that into my terminal. It doesn't appear to do anything, but if you have a look at my bash rc file, you'll see I've added this source command down the bottom of the bash rc file. In order to get bash to reload, normally I would log out and log in again, but in this particular case I'm not going to do that because I'm in this demo environment. So instead I'm going to nest bash inside itself, so start a new kind of bash instance under the one that I already have by typing bash -- login. And now what will happen is, as I navigate around my file system, so let's go to the home directory, do a listing there, go to the temp directory, do a listing here, maybe go into the project, my project directory, do a listing here. I don't have to do the listing, that's just to kind of demonstrate to you what I'm doing. If I now run memy list, you'll see that it's actually starting to add those directories to my memy database as well, right? So those are becoming part of my frequency database that I can now use to navigate around my file system. So you can start to see how this is providing similar capability to what you get out of the box with tools such as Zoxide, for example. Now, the one command that memy does provide, in addition to when we add this bash hook here, that basically provides a capability very similar to what Zoxide also does out of the box, is memy-cd. So if I run memy-cd, you'll see that it now lists all of the directories that are in my memy database, again in the order of frequency. I can go and select one, so let's say, for example, the temp directory, and you'll see that memy is now switching into the temp directory automatically. And it does that by automatically integrating with FZF kind of out of the box. So you can see how, in essence, memy is providing many of the capabilities, if not all of the capabilities of tools such as Zoxide, but it's also providing this capable, rich backend that is, in addition, able to track, in addition to being able to track directories, is also able to track files as well, right? And you can begin to see how, you know, with this simple kind of command line interface, you can combine this with other tools. And as I said, over time, we plan to add more and more rich kind of out of the box capabilities, but at least for now memy provides those raw commands enabling you to note files and enabling you to list files, and also provides hooks that allow you to integrate memy with at least a certain selection of kind of popular open source command line and command line oriented tools. Memy also provides a bunch of other capabilities which I won't go into this video, but there are shell completions that you can configure. There is a configuration file to allow you to customize memy. And I would encourage you, if you're interested and if you try out memy, if there are any issues that you uncover, any bugs, or if there are any kind of sort of feature requests, things that you think it would be cool if memy did, but it doesn't do today, please do go to the GitHub repository and open an issue accordingly, and we'll take a look. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.